You see, the universe has a plan, kids. And that plan is always in motion. All these little parts of the machine constantly working, making sure that you end up exactly where you're supposed to be, exactly when you're supposed to be there. The right place, at the right time.
In one way or another, the pandemic dramatically changed our lives. We all know that. Around this time, when I was hanging out with my friends and eating Korean barbecue or going to Disneyland with them after school, I suddenly found myself indoors, isolated from them and the world, where the days started blending together. Even though I was uncertain of the future and what this would mean for the rest of my high school days, there were a couple of bright sides. Since I had so much time on my hands, I finally created this very YouTube channel after wanting to do so for years, talking about my love for movies and animation. This also meant I got to watch a lot more of them, and my taste and knowledge of them has expanded to all four corners of the globe, with so much more I know I have yet to discover. However, there was one film during these trying times that truly spoke to me, as someone who, admittedly, still very much has a serious case of wanderlust. The film I watched a year into quarantine, this is... Being the second film adaptation of James Thurber's short story of the same name, it was in production hell for decades. Starting in 1994, it was in the hands of a multitude of studios and directors like Ron Howard, Gore Verbinski, and even Steven Spielberg, before it fell into the lap of Ben Stiller, who initially accepted the lead role but took a seat in the director's chair as well soon after. After a staggering 19 years since its initial conception, it finally arrived in theaters on Christmas Day of 2013, and the reception was... not great. Not great. It was deemed by critics to be cheesy and pretentious, and with the so-so box office return, it seemed like it was destined to fade into obscurity. But then, something happened. Look up The Secret Life of Walter Mitty video essay on YouTube and you'll find yourself with a pretty good number of them. Perhaps you'll even find the one you're watching right now. Go onto Letterboxd, Rotten Tomatoes, and IMDb, and the audience ratings are awfully positive. So what happened? Well, like a number of my other favorite movies, it was lucky enough to become a cult classic. Critics might not love it, but audiences certainly do, including me. With movie discourse becoming more accessible over the past decade thanks to the internet, the film has found itself at home with fans that greet it with open arms. But why does it resonate with me specifically? Well, I watched it at a time in my life where I couldn't go outside. Coupled with not having a job or even driver's license at the time, I found the movie to be immensely inspiring. But there's other aspects that make it amazing, so let's get into it. The film is about a timid photo manager working at Life magazine who daydreams. A lot. Despite working somewhere called Life, he doesn't do a lot of living. Life is being transitioned to an online format, so Walter is responsible for processing the last ever cover photo. But when he receives the negatives from famed and elusive photographer Sean O'Connell, the one that is the quintessence of Life, the cover photo, is missing. So Walter goes on a real-life adventure that he never could have possibly dreamed of. Meanwhile, he begins connecting with a coworker Cheryl while they piece together the location of Sean and the negative. Walter gains world experience from traveling and interacting with various people from all walks of life. In other words, he touches grass, something I'm still kind of struggling with. The film does a great job showing the mundanity of Walter in his day-to-day life. The camera is close, very stationary, you basically never see the horizon, and the score early on implements a ticking clock, a repetitive sound that thankfully doesn't get annoying since we're all so familiar with it. But over time, the camera becomes handheld and the shots become wider to showcase the wonders Walter is experiencing and makes us feel we're right alongside him. The daydream sequences act in the opposite way, but for the better. They start off very, of course, fantastical and imaginary. We see Walter jump off a bridge into a building that's about to explode to save Cheryl's dog, and later he has a big superhero-esque fight scene with the new executive at Life when he tries to take away Walter's Stretch Armstrong, a birthday gift he received from his sister earlier in the movie. When Walter begins having a more exciting reality of his own, the daydreams become less frequent but more realistic. The one I consider to be the transition to this is when Walter is in Greenland staying behind after a very drunk helicopter pilot offers to take him on a boat that Sean might be on. He imagines Cheryl coming on the karaoke stage at the pub he's in and convinces him to jump onto the helicopter by singing Space Oddity by David Bowie, which, as she stated earlier,
that song is about courage and going into the unknown. It's a cool song.
It's a powerful, if impulsive, moment when Walter leaps onto the helicopter. Again, the one being piloted by a very intoxicated man. But drunkenly operating heavy machinery is not the message the scene is trying to convey. Aside from Walter getting up and leaving for the airport to go to Greenland like he did earlier, this is his genuine leap of faith that alters the course of this movie. But also, yes, don't drink and fly, kids. Unlike his other daydreams where they're abruptly interrupted by someone trying to get his attention, like Ted saying,
"Ground control to Major Tom. Can you hear me, Major Tom?"
the reason why Space Oddity plays an important role in the movie in the first place, Cheryl simply fades away. Walter realizes he no longer has to depend on fantasies to make his life exciting. However, this isn't his last daydream of his. In fact, he and us as the audience don't realize it was a daydream until the end of the movie. When Walter returns from Iceland, another country he went to, he stops by Cheryl's house to drop off a gift for her son. A longboard he traded his Stretch Armstrong for that he uses in one of the best scenes in the movie. But the person who opens the door, he believes, is Cheryl's ex-husband and that they got back together. It's not until the very last scene when it's revealed that he was the repairman for Cheryl's refrigerator, which was previously established all the way at the very beginning of the movie.
Actually, I waited for my refrigerator repairman who never came.
Going back to the longboard scene, it is a blast to witness. I think of it the same way I watch the parade scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If you don't at the very least smile while watching it, I don't think you're human. While on the boat that Sean ended up not being on, Walter trades his briefcase and casual business attire for a simple drawstring bag and a comfy, cozy sweater. Piece by piece, he strips away his sterile corporate life, and the last of it is when he rips up his tie to help him traverse through the Icelandic countryside. That and other sequences of Walter just living life are the highlight of the movie for me. He plays a ball game with some strangers in the Himalayas and it's shot during the beautiful golden hour. Another favorite of mine is him going to the airport and running past a bunch of Life's iconic covers of these amazing people and moments in history to create one for his own. Honestly, sometimes it makes me want to cry. I also think the movie has a great cast. Ben Stiller is wonderful as Walter Mitty as he plays the timid nature of the character very well, but also makes his growth feel unbelievably, well, believable. Kristen Wiig does a good job as his love interest Cheryl, occasionally matching Walter's awkwardness. I'll talk about Adam Scott in a bit, but another awesome comedic actor in this is Patton Oswalt, who doesn't actually show up on screen until there's 20 minutes left, but he brings some really nice comedic moments throughout as an eHarmony customer service agent where he periodically calls Walter to see how he's doing while he's on his daring journey.
Hey Todd, I can't really talk right now. I'm on my way to a volcano. What the?
Sean Penn as the photographer Sean O'Connell is another character who doesn't have a lot of screen time, but he perfectly captures the laid-back yet mysterious aura the movie set him up to have. His scene with Walter near the end of the film is very memorable that I'll also get into later. Now on to the technical things I love. First of all, Ben Stiller is an amazing director. He has an excellent eye for conveying ideas, from the amazing to the straight up bizarre. There's a brief scene that's shown from the perspective of a TSA x-ray with no dialogue, and I don't understand how someone could come up with that. Information is given to us so creatively, like the opening credits being incorporated into Walter's environment during his commute to work, or even Life's motto when he begins to step into the unknown as he embarks on his flight to Greenland. I also love the color theory of the film. Walter's workplace, his apartment, his comfort zone essentially, is bathed in blue and other cool tones, but in his early daydreams and globetrotting adventure, we see a wider array of hues. The colors red and blue specifically carry a lot of significance, with red being associated with adventure. You probably see it now with Walter's change in outfits. There's this great video by BB who points out a ton of instances where the colors play a role, so I'll have a link to that in the description. The score was done by Theodore Shapiro, and it consists of a lot of humming by Jose Gonzalez, who produced the lyrical soundtrack. I really like it because I find myself humming a lot when my mind begins to wander like Walter's. Usually a song that's stuck in my head like I'm Just Ken, or motifs I love from movies like Catwoman's theme from The Batman or the titular Song of the Sea. Like I mentioned earlier, the cinematography by Stuart Dryburgh becomes more dynamic as the movie progresses, and in general it offers a ton of awesome shots, to the point that there are just too many to count. The camera will also sometimes alter ever so slightly to transition to a daydream, specifically when Walter is fantasizing about Cheryl. We see a tiny dolly zoom in the office and a subtle warp in the park. I like to think of it as the modern version of the old Vaseline on the camera lens trick. The editing by Greg Hayden is also fantastic. The transitions between scenes are absolutely immaculate. I can't believe this movie wasn't nominated for any technical categories at the Oscars. Are there issues I have though? Yeah, a couple. Like the title is shown twice for some reason. I don't mean at the beginning and end as bookends, but immediately back to back in the same scene. The second one is great, but they could have removed the first one entirely since it's so small, but I do like how it's integrated into the environment like the rest of the opening credits. And some of the dialogue in the beginning is a bit clunky and a tad too expository.
Hey, bad day to be late. We just got acquired.
What?
Yeah, over the weekend.
Mom made you your favorite clementine cake.
Aren't you supposed to be at the retirement place with her getting the piano moved in?
Also, this movie takes place in the span of about a week, and at the beginning Walter's sister Odessa is on her way to audition for Grease, but then at the end they're set to perform that night. That's not how the rehearsal process works, but there are things I will defend. A point of criticism when the film came out was the product placement, and yeah, it's noticeable. Papa John's, eHarmony, Cinnabon, Walter randomly name drops KFC at one point. When Patton Oswalt's character Todd talks about how wonderful of a service eHarmony is or how Cinnabon is, and I quote,
frosted heroin.
It does feel a bit heavy-handed. But as Houston Coley mentioned in his video on the movie, there's narrative purpose to it. Papa John's was Walter's first job the week his dad died and his family didn't have any savings. Then his eHarmony account glitches when he's trying to reach out to Cheryl, so it forces him to talk to her in person, which causes them to connect more and more as the movie progresses. Houston also points out that even though it's product placement, it's not necessarily shown in a positive light. Like, Walter has a distaste for Papa John's because he associates it with that dark period in his life, and later he ends up canceling his eHarmony subscription because of how expensive it is. Another thing is that I love Adam Scott in this. I've heard people say he's too corny and over the top, but my introduction to him was as Trevor in The Good Place, a bad place demon who is so hyperbolically evil and rude, it's hysterical. And it looks like he took another trip down to earth and grew a beard because that's basically who Ted Hendricks is.
I'm a negative asset manager.
Worth the wait.
What's up, idiot? Sorry I'm late, babe. Hey, are you pregnant?
That's not possible.
Congrats.
Do you think if I hit him with a paperclip, would he move?
Oh, hello. Hi. You look like a piece of crap. Are you Eleanor?
The negative needs to go through a very
I'm sorry, I
technical-
can't have a professional conversation with you. You and your little blonde pal.
He's campy, but I have a lot of fun watching him. But now let's go back into why this movie has impacted me, personally. There's a reason why this video started with the scene from How I Met Your Mother. It's one of my favorite TV shows, unsatisfying finale and all, but it made me fascinated with the concept of being at the right place at the right time. God, the universe, or who/whatever you believe in has a general plan, and it's astonishing how a couple variables in a sea of many in this messy and complicated world can perfectly fall into place like puzzle pieces. How even though it's a long, long journey, Ted meeting the titular mother was carefully planned out, and how the paths they took in life had them end up at the same train station on the same rainy night. I guess that's just the hopeless romantic in me, though I always think about what could have been or what could have happened at some different point, whether in my personal life or with fictional characters and events I watch unfold. I was 10, almost 11 years old when The Secret Life of Walter Mitty came out, and I remember seeing some of the promotional material, but I wasn't interested. What if I ended up seeing it in theaters when it came out? What if I saw it sometime before the pandemic? What if I saw it now? Would it hit as hard as it did back in 2021? Every summer since then, I've made sure I sat down and watched this, kind of as an annual check-in to see where I am in life. The day I watched it for the first time, I was so lazy to go outside and walk to a 7-Eleven to get some candy and a Slurpee, but the day after, I felt so motivated I went out to get them. With a mask, of course. Yeah, it was just a 7-Eleven run of all things, but it was a baby step, and that's the beginning of how much this movie inspires me. The second time was a few months later when I was bemoaning the fact that I'm still stuck at home, though I do distinctly remember watching it a couple days before I was hired at my first job, so now I can start earning money. My third viewing was just a little over 1 year later, where I got my learner's permit and became incredibly stressed and burnt out at said first job since I was working 40 to 48 hours a week and feeling like I wasn't being valued there. I guess how the movie sets up Walter to be in that position. I was headed to Canada to visit my aunt, my first time on a plane in ages. And 19-year-old me was right, I did have an adventure of my own. I went paddleboarding, stargazing, visited the filming locations of one of my favorite movies, saw some other amazing sights in the city and forest. I had a spectacular time. It was exactly the kind of vacation I needed, away from that workplace and away from America. My fourth viewing was last year after I got my driver's license that previous fall and shortly after I started working at my current job that I enjoy a lot more. And my fifth and most recent was for this video. I've enjoyed my summer, taking time off school, working on my Prince of Egypt musical video, now currently working on another video that might be almost, if not as long. I haven't taken a distant getaway trip since Canada, though while rewatching the movie just recently I transferred some money from my checking into my savings just to continue saving up for another grand adventure like Walter's at some point in the future. But in all honesty, I'm still struggling with getting out of my comfort zone. I've spent a lot of my time indoors working on videos, though I'd make the effort to go out to the pool and work there sometimes instead. But like that 7-Eleven run all those years ago, all 3 of them, I'm taking baby steps. I drove to LA by myself for the first time back in April to meet up with some friends after being so intimidated by the amount of traffic and how much gas it'll take, but we had a lot of fun. I was going to do it again with some other friends a couple weeks ago and I was going to have footage of it in this video, but of course I got COVID, so that didn't work. But now I think I'm more willing to do day trips and road trips like that. Though gas in Southern California is stupidly expensive, and it's a big reason why I feel the need to stay local. That really extends to my thoughts on the general state of the economy right now. Has everything always been this expensive? I saw that Walter's plane ticket to Greenland cost almost $3,000. Like, what? If it isn't obvious enough, I need a bit of a push to get out of my comfort zone. That's why it took me so long to get a job and driver's license, since I knew it meant I was leaving adolescence for good. Yet at the same time, I have been itching to get out and touch grass like Walter. There are so many places I want to travel to. I've only been to a small handful of states and one other country, and I've lived in SoCal my entire life, and I know there's more cities and countries out there for me to experience. Chicago, New Orleans, France, more of Canada, Japan, China, Asia in general basically, French Polynesia, maybe a dozen other places I won't know I'll enjoy until I go visit them. But now, with my summer coming to a close, I have to go back to school. I'll save up for a trip, or maybe to move out, who knows. But for now, let's go back to see how our friend Walter is doing. After trekking the Himalayas, he finally finds Sean. It's a fantastic scene, with some amazingly well-written dialogue and nothing but the sound of the wind softly blowing. Sean offers to have Walter sit right next to him and catch his breath while he's looking out for a snow leopard.
You call the snow leopard the ghost cat. It never lets itself be seen.
But then, Sean drops this sensational pearl of wisdom.
Beautiful things don't ask for attention.
I love this quote, and one of the reasons is because I think of the film itself to be a ghost cat. It came, it went, it didn't alter the course of cinema, though if it did, I wouldn't be complaining. While I could lament over what could have been, I have to accept the reality that it didn't make bank at the box office or win a ton of Oscars. Even if it did, I guess having a super strong award campaign would go against the message of the movie, to look for and admire people and aspects in life that would otherwise be taken for granted. I believe those who are willing to seek out the film and appreciate it for what it's worth will get something out from the experience. I certainly did. It's a film I believe was unfairly treated at the time of its release, but thankfully has received more praise in retrospect. It's made me more interested in checking out Ben Stiller's directorial filmography. I still need to check out Severance, which reunites him with Adam Scott. But wait, you're probably thinking,
what was it? Sasquatch? A unicorn?
A negative?
Yeah.
well, that's for you to find out. I don't know why you'd be watching this video if you haven't seen the movie already, especially with how many spoilers I gave away, but if you haven't seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, then I highly recommend you do. Maybe you'll find it as inspiring as I do. It's a film not seeking validation or acclaim, though beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so you should see for yourself. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and join my Patreon, and I will see you later.